All of that is the part where I was like, oh my gosh. Why did they give me this job? Walking into some of these beauty corporate spaces, I just automatically stand out. There's this feeling that a lot of these publications haven't been for us. And so therefore, why would we read them? Why would we participate? Right?
In this inaugural episode, I'm in conversation with Jessica Krull, editor-in-chief of Allure Magazine. Jessica leads the development of multi-platform editorial content for print, digital, and video platforms at Allure, including the Reader's Choice Awards and Best of Beauty Awards franchises. Jessica also consults on brand projects including the Allure Podcast, Allure Beauty Box subscription program, and the Allure Store. Jessica joined Allure in 2019, first serving as features director and then as content director more recently. And as content director, she spearheaded the Melanin Edit, an Allure platform exploring all things related to Black beauty, skincare, and wellness. Prior to joining Allure, Jessica served as Deputy Beauty Director at Refinery 29, and she also held editorial roles at SELF and Popsugar. Let's go ahead and jump in. So in your first editor's letter at Allure, you actually pulled from one of your high school publications, Onyx, and you wrote, it's very profound, "You were born with beauty, but there are some things that you can only gain through living: intelligence, poise, and determination." And you were only 18, and you wrote that statement, and clearly you had a vision for ultimately what you wanted your career to be. And now you are the editor-in-chief at Allure Magazine. So I just want to take a minute to celebrate you because your story is so inspiring, and we're going to get way deeper into it today.
Thank you. I mean, that was the most vain project of all time because I was on both covers. My own picture was on both covers. So
that must have been so wild.
I was like, wow, I really thought a lot of myself.
So much of this series is thinking about sort of business through an entrepreneurial lens. And even though you're not the founder of Allure per se, I'm sure the way that you operate from a day-to-day perspective is like with a founder's mindset. Mm. And I'm just so curious about how do you cultivate that entrepreneurial spirit within your own work, and how do you motivate your team to do that too?
I think a lot of the times what I discovered about being editor-in-chief is it is like running a business. I run the P&L.
Which most people probably don't realize.
I ask for investment, via the larger company. And so for me, when I first became editor-in-chief, it was really looking at the amazing brand that already existed and thinking, well, how do we take this to new audiences? Mm-hmm. How do we bring this into the future in a way? Just like a founder, I kind of looked at our areas of opportunity and ways that we can grow into that. Mm-hmm. And I think the media industry is constantly changing. So we have to innovate based on what the market is telling us, what our readers are telling us. One example is TikTok has totally changed the way people interact with beauty in the last few years after the pandemic. And so, we have to look at what we have and say, okay, how are we going to bring beauty and our expertise and our great service to those people who watch 60-second videos instead of reading a 5,000-word story? So I think that has been some of the ways that we've tried to become entrepreneurial in the way that we look at this, 30-plus year publication.
You talked a little bit about how dynamic the media and beauty industry is, and you see so many trends as they're happening. You've seen brands come and go. Based on your experiences, what do you think it takes for a brand to stand the test of time?
Money.
Yes, definitely money.
Money. I think so many brands start and some of them are great and they never really make it. Mm-hmm. And I think it all is based on the founder knowing when the right time is. We talk about this a lot, right? When's the right time to bring on investors? Mm-hmm. When's the right time to go into retail? Yeah. Because choosing the wrong time can really be detrimental to a brand, right? If you go into retail too early, then you don't have your supply chain worked out, and it costs a lot of money to go in retail, which I think a lot of people don't know.
Yes,
it's not like the retailer's paying you. You're,
right.
paying a lot to be a part of that opportunity. So I think, obviously, the efficacy of the product matters, right? Efficacy of the product is number one always. But then I would say things like packaging. Well, that's going to get you a good retailer. That's going to influence the customer experience. That's going to make people stand out on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And then, obviously a brand can go viral, but, do you have the infrastructure to back up virality, right?
Completely.
Do you have enough? Are you going to sell out constantly, right? So these are some things that I think are really helpful. A lot of businesses try to grow too fast.
Exactly.
I know you, for example, were small for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of brands just try to grow too quickly, and sometimes they're not able to say no.
Completely. I mean, the timing piece is so key. And it's so easy to sort of get caught up with what's going on around you. You see other brands surpassing you or doing cool things, and you feel like you have to keep up. But sometimes that can actually put you on the wrong lane for where you should be. So that's really, really good insight.
And also, I tell a lot of founders, when I meet some founders, they have 20 SKUs already. And I'm like, one thing.
Right.
When you hit it big, it's usually one thing that is everyone's talking about.
That's
and
right.
I think find that one or two, maybe launch with 3 SKUs and then grow from there. Audience listening is so important. And I think oftentimes, people come at me with 20 things. I'm like, what's your specialty here?
Right.
There's so much on the market. I think oftentimes people believe that their thing is the next best, thing. And I have to often break hearts and say, I'm sorry. I saw this yesterday.
Right.
So I think it's so important to, if you have 1 or 2 amazing products, focus on that, make those things that people love, and then grow from there.
Completely. So slow and steady wins the race, right?
Yes.
Completely. So many people don't know this about you, but not only do you have a day job, but you have a night and weekend job. And I really want to explore this because there's so many people that have this entrepreneurial itch, but they're not in a position to leave their day job. And you don't necessarily need to. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing with real estate, what inspired that, and how do you have the time to balance it all?
The side hustle life is exhausting. Just for example, earlier this week, we had a problem at one of the houses. So I had to be at the house at 8 a.m. and had to be work at 11 a.m. So,
wow.
It's just I was all constantly going back and forth. But what inspired me to go into real estate, I don't tell a story often, but I'm going to tell you guys the truth. It was a breakup. So I was with a long-term partner and we lived together. And while we were together, he bought his first investment property. And it really opened my eyes to what was available in that space, right? Being from Georgia, you buy a house, you live in the house. Being from New York, you rent for life.
Right.
So I wasn't really aware of real estate investment. And when he brought his property, it really opened my eyes to the potential there. We broke up and we went our separate ways. And I was like, well, if he could buy a house, I surely can buy a house. So I decided to buy my first property in 2019. And I bought a duplex. And I do something called house hacking, where I live in a portion of the house and then I rent out the other portion. Tenants take care of the rent and I save my money. And I just recently bought my second property, which is now rented. And so that is also kind of working up to a place where it will pay for itself.
Congratulations. I mean, that is an incredible way to really sort of accelerate savings, diversify your income streams, all of those things. And it's so funny what you said about the breakup, because that's actually how I learned to ski. I had no interest in skiing. And my ex was a big skier and he would go on all these trips and I would never get an invite. And I was like, I'm going to take skiing lessons. I'm going to learn how to ski so I can go. So, sometimes breakups aren't such a bad thing.
Well, I agree. And I think it really motivated me. Yes, it was a little bit of revenge house, but, it's catapulted me into this new world of personal finance and to real estate investing that has really magnified my ability to grow wealth. And I think it's so important. I do have a day job and the house is kind of the extra thing on the side that drives me crazy because if anyone owns a home, they know everything breaks.
Yeah, right.
Everything breaks. But I think in the end, it's a long-term plan, right?
Yeah,
it's a plan
definitely.
that eventually all my expenses in life will be covered by real estate.
Yes.
And that will give me freedom to, do what I need, do what I want.
I love that. And oftentimes too, just having that state of mind, knowing that you have that freedom, it actually like allows you to show up at work better,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
you've got that balance going on.
Well, it makes me a little bit more willing to take risks, right?
Exactly.
Because, as we said, this industry is very volatile. Media is very volatile.
Yes.
Just reading about layoffs at one of the big publishing houses before I came here. And, something that I was told early in my career was, you will be laid off once. Granted, I have not been laid off yet. So maybe it's still coming. But, in that time when I was coming into the industry, it was the big .com era. And, I think having that in the back of my mind always is like, okay, what happens if I get laid off? Right?
Exactly.
And so now I can say, well, I can sit in my house for a little while because my expenses are covered by the real estate. So it's just a long-term wealth building plan.
As an entrepreneur, something I'm really passionate about is this concept of growth mindset, which is all about, cultivating resilience, because at the end of the day, whenever you set out to achieve something great, you're going to have challenges and setbacks. Yes. And it's all about like building that just internal strength and muscle. One of the questions that I get asked a lot about is about imposter syndrome. I feel it's like a very big trending topic right now. And imposter syndrome can happen when you're taking on a big responsibility and you haven't done it before. Yeah. And you are an example of this. I mean, editor-in-chief at Allure Magazine, that is a big title. Yeah. And even though you've been in the industry for a while, you haven't done specifically that job. So how did you navigate sort of getting up to speed, figuring it out, and building that confidence?
Well, I will say I want to send a big thank you to my team, because the thing about when I became editor-in-chief of Allure was I was already a team member. So I had already spent 2 years as a member of the team, and I was really promoted from within. And so, that could have gone two ways. Like the whole staff would have been like, oh, heck no, we're not doing this. We're all leaving. But they all, for the most part, stayed and really supported me. And I think I always tell people this is the brand that I was built to be editor-in-chief for, because it's all beauty. I know the brand well. I know the industry well. I think the real learning curve was being a part of a corporate organization. I think I'm a creative, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. Yeah. When you're editor-in-chief, it's more of a general manager job. Yeah. I'm dealing a lot with people management. I'm dealing a lot with corporate meetings and, P&L and, asking for investment and going out and meeting clients. It's a very much so business job. Right. I tell people like, edit, when's the last time I did that? That was the hardest part, just navigating, okay, now I'm in an organization, in a position where I have to ask for resources, defend my team, help my team succeed, be strategic. Every, founder or business owner knows about strategy. Oh, yeah. Politics, corporate politics is something you have to deal with. And so I think all of that is the part where I was like, oh my gosh, why did they give me this job? The editing part, the writing part, the running the magazine part is the part that I'm very comfortable with. It's when I step into new rooms that I'm like, oh, I'm like the youngest person here because I'm also very young. I'm very brown. So, walking into some of these beauty corporate spaces and walking into some of the media corporate spaces, I just automatically stand out. I feel that it's taken a lot of time for me to say, I belong here. Yeah. I'm here for a reason. I'm here because we need change. And when we talk about beauty in particular, I'm representative of what the future of beauty looks like. So, when I had that energy, when I have that energy of I know something that they don't know, I have expertise that they don't have.
That's right.
I'm the future. Yeah. I was able to kind of tamper down that imposter syndrome. Yeah. I also think it takes a couple wins. There's always, just like with any job, there's a a period of proving,
Yes.
right? A proving that you were the right choice, proving that you can do this job. And so I think about after 8 months, I was like, all right, I'm done proving myself. We've all decided I was the right choice.
Yeah.
So, let me go forth with that energy.
Completely. And is there just any like tidbit you can give people? Because cultivating that confidence and what you said was so incredible, but it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. So is there just any sort of advice or tips that you can give someone who's really facing that imposter syndrome and they're just trying to build that confidence? Any tactics?
I always say I have a hype person. I definitely have a hype person that I call who's like, you're that one. Who's just gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about, Jessica. You're it.
Yeah.
You're hot fire. I think so much of imposter syndrome is we get so much in our heads that then we can't do it. Because we're the ones telling us, oh, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not.
Right.
And it's if we can somehow just tamper that down so that we can do it, I think that is key. But I'll be completely honest, for me, I have anxiety. I take Lexapro. That helps me, right? And, I took it before becoming editor-in-chief. But as soon as I became editor-in-chief, I was like, we need to up this prescription. Because it's intense in here.
Yeah.
And so I think that is something that has been key, is really because of my level of anxiety, having that extra help to quiet the voices in my head really helps. Because even today, there are some days where I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
But I do it for my team. I do it because I know there are people watching me. I meet so many people who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it's you, that you're the editor-in-chief of Allure. And, for those people, I don't want to disappoint them. And I do it because I have a goal in mind, right? I have to keep pressing towards that goal. And until I meet it, I can't take my foot off the gas.
Yeah.
So, I've been really supported by both people above me and my team to make this happen. And I really appreciate all that it's opened up for me.
Well, thank you. And I will say that it all has a domino effect because seeing is believing. And I'm sure there are so many women out there that see what you have done, and that gives them the confidence to pursue what they want to do. Yeah. So thank you for being that example.
Oh, my pleasure.
So one of the topics I'm really passionate about that inspired my content site is this concept of the wellpreneur, because success is not just created through having, a great outcome with your business or your company, but it's like, how do you cultivate that 360? Because at the end of the day, I believe you can have it all. And the only way you get to have it all is if you really sort of think about it from that perspective and you plan for that, especially when it comes to, for example, personal relationships. They can be so hard to maintain when you're so busy with work, whether it's friendships, keeping up with family. So talk to me a little bit about that, because you mentioned that you have this hype person that sort of keeps you on your toes. How do you maintain those relationships?
It is hard. I spend so much of my time on work and then on real estate. For me, it's really taking one day in the weekend to sleep, right? So something that I used to feel very guilty about was that I would get home on a Friday night and, of course, go to sleep. Like, real people who work don't go out on Friday nights. It's like Friday is like, I'm in the house. But on Saturday, I would just binge TV all day. And I would just sit. And I would feel so guilty because my house wasn't getting cleaned. I wasn't cooking food for myself. I wasn't calling friends. And then I realized, you know what? My body is telling me something. I need that. And then on Sundays, I take time to run errands, phone calls to my friends, just really put into my personal life in that way. I also realized that in order to have time for that, I have to delegate. Yeah. I think we're so good at delegating at work, but when you get to personal life, we don't delegate. Right. And we think that, especially as a woman from the South, I'm like, okay, I should be cleaning my own house. I should be cooking my own meals, but just because you can doesn't mean you must.
Exactly.
And so one day I was talking to my therapist and she was like, list all the things that you hate doing, outsource it. So I have a meal delivery service.
Wow.
I have someone who comes and helps me clean my home. She does my laundry. She puts the laundry away. It's been a game changer. And, I used to feel, even now I feel a little guilty. I mean, it's spending money, but it's given me space to then, when I'm laying, I'm recharging.
Yes.
And then the next day I'm able to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I'm able to order my groceries, pick them up, go about my day, go out, talk to friends without feeling like, oh, there's about 50 million things I'm doing instead that I should be doing instead of this.
Exactly.
And when it comes to romantic relationships, I think we've both talked about this. Nada. Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. That's next on my list. I might be outsourcing that.
I love what you said about delegating things in your personal life, because a lot of people don't think about that. But I will say, in order to have the means to delegate in your personal life, you've got to also have your personal finances in check.
Yes.
And again, it's something that a lot of women don't talk about. And believe it or not, some people get so consumed with their business or job that their personal finance situation is like a mess. Mm-hmm. So how are you doing that? Obviously, you have your real estate venture, but how do you also make your personal finances a priority in your day-to-day?
I'm a true believer in paying yourself first. Mm-hmm. So, my friends often laugh at me because I'm the first one to say, I'm broke. I'm like, I'm broke. I don't have money. And they're like, Jessica, you own 2 houses. Like, you have this big job. I know you're not broke. But I live like I'm broke in the sense that when my check comes, it pays my savings account. It pays my investment accounts. It pays everything. And then I get the scraps left over for spending. But I think that is the way that I live my life to avoid lifestyle creep. Yes. And so I have a huge tracker that tracks my spending on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. I only get the money into my checking account that I can spend on food and activities and things like that. Don't have extra money just in your accounts.
Right. Exactly.
The other day I had $18 in my checking account. And for someone, who would think like, oh my gosh, she's got all this job and real estate. She can't have yes, I have $18 in my checking account. And that's because I only had $18 to spend. Everything else was in my savings account. It was in my investment account. It's gone. Yeah. And living that way helps me stay on top of my personal finance. Completely. Because I think, especially in this industry, people love to buy clothes. Yeah. People love to buy nice shoes, nice things. And luckily, I'm the type of person that stuff doesn't matter to me.
So we talked just about how busy and crazy the day-to-day is. You've got Allure, you've got your real estate, you're keeping your personal life super organized. But how do you think about vacation? Because I know for me, sometimes I actually feel guilty taking vacation because I'm like, I have so much to do. I'm nervous about getting behind, but there are benefits in taking vacation. And so I want to know how you think about that and how you do that.
It's something I haven't mastered yet. Vacation is very, very hard to take, especially when your job is decision making. I think the other thing about being a leader is it's not very hands-on, right? It's not a job where you're making things or you have an automatic output, which I think is another thing that kicked up my imposter syndrome. I'm used to someone who I go to work, I write a story, I edit a story, and at the end of the day say, I did these 5 things, here's the output. Yes. Whereas as a leader, you're like, I made these 10 decisions, I had these 10 meetings. What did I do all day? I sent 3 emails, but I think that's what makes it harder to leave, right? Because you can't do work ahead of time. Right. Decisions come when they come. Exactly. And, I think that makes it hard to let go because you're like, oh gosh, everybody has to make decisions without me. I have an amazing team who makes all the right decisions when I'm not there, but it's still so hard to disconnect. Right. And actually, I just went on vacation. I tacked a vacation onto a work trip. Okay. So I was already going to Europe for something else. And I said, okay, I'm going to take a week for myself. But what I realized is as a leader, you need 2 weeks. I was only taking 1 week. And the reason why I say you need 2 weeks is because the whole first week, I was still thinking about work. Wow. I was. Yeah. And I'm just being honest.
You almost need a vacation into your vacation.
Right. You needed that time to disconnect. And I think the reality is every vacation I've been on, I had to take at least one work call. And it was an emergency or something was going down and I had to be there to make the decision. And I think that's what makes it hard to take a vacation. And that's part of my personality, wanting to be there for my team, not wanting to leave my team hanging. But it is important. I also think vacation is important for a change of perspective. We work in a creative industry. And going other places, seeing other ways people activate beauty is so crucial to getting new ideas.
Exactly.
The US is actually behind when it comes to beauty innovation. So, I recently had an opportunity to go to Singapore and just walking into their stores and seeing and discovering, or if I'm going, I just went on vacation with my friends. If I'm going on vacation with my friends, what are y'all thinking about? What are y'all interested in? What's your primary beauty concern? That's where I get ideas because being in an office, being in meetings all day, that's not where we're going to get new, fresh inspiration on how the world is thinking about beauty.
Exactly. I think that's so important. So actually taking that PTO will actually allow you to do your job better.
Yes.
So really, really important. So during your time at Allure, you spearheaded the creation of the Melanin Edit, which is a reclamation of our heritage and all the contributions that melanated people have bestowed on the beauty world. What has given you that grit and just that idea to disrupt the beauty space?
I think it was honestly talking to my friends. I have a great group of Black girl friends who are very successful, very wonderful. And, for many years, they only read the publications I worked for because I was there.
Yeah.
And when I would ask them, well, what are you reading? It was, publications that were focused on Black folks. Because I think in general, there's this feeling that a lot of these publications haven't been for us. And so therefore, why would we read them? Why would we participate? Right? And so I really wanted to create a place where we could feel welcome, where it was, for us, by us. But also being a writer in this space, when you work for a mainstream publication whose audience is a primarily white audience, you often have to dumb things down. Go to your editor and be like, this is a story I wrote. And they're like, okay, well, can you explain what cornrows are? Can you just put an extra little sentence in about, what a TWA is? Oh, can you explain what a silk press is? I was tired. I'm tired. So I think this was this place where we could say no explanation, just give it to us straight. We can talk about the joy. We can talk about the complication without feeling like it's a voyeuristic experience, right? That we're doing it so others can, realize how we are. This is an opportunity for us to tell our stories authentically to each other. And, what I often say is you can't try to sell me an edge control gel. You can't try to sell me an edge control gel without knowing the experience of sitting with my mom, getting my hair braided every summer while I was watching The Lion King, right? Because that is a experience that so many Black women relate to, right? It's like you hear that and you're like, oh man, those were the days, And so once we start to break down that wall and say, we get that, that was us too, then we're able to build a place that's safe for those stories and that's accepted. And that's what I want everyone to feel when they come to Allure. Our site in general, we've really focused on expanding the way we cover age, expanding the way we cover gender, just so that everyone feels like when they come to Allure, that's me. Yeah. It's not some model. It's not some celebrity all the time. We do a lot of celebrity coverage, but that's me. And so I think that's what's most important.
That is so important and it's so powerful. That is just really important work. Thank you. So now that you've reached the highest ranking position at Allure Magazine, editor-in-chief, what is next for you?
For me, when I think about what's next after however long I spend at Allure, I really think about personal finance, a lot. And I think about, as a single woman, how can I be more helpful to other single women who are trying to build wealth and trying to get their personal finance together, whether they're divorcees, single mothers, entrepreneurs. I just think, the majority of women in America are single women. That's just the way the world is. Yeah. And so how can we help them grow wealth and be the backbone of this country financially? And so I think a lot about how I'm going to get that message out and really help people in that area, because I want every person to own a house and to make money off their house.
This conversation has been so inspiring to me, and I know it's going to be so inspiring to our community. And we have so many people who are aspiring entrepreneurs who maybe want to get a start in media or beauty. What is that one piece of advice or perspective that you can give that person?
I think it's really important to say yes. Just say yes to as many opportunities as you can, right? I think about now when I do a lot of TV, a lot of live TV, and that came from me being at my first job at Popsugar. And someone was like, hey, do you want to be a beauty correspondent? I was like, yeah, sure. And now it's given me so many skills that have allowed me to really soar in this role. I think you never know what skill is going to be useful in the future. Yeah. So gain them all. It's like Pokemon. Got to catch them all. Definitely. And gotta get as many skills as possible. Because the way this industry is going, all skills are required.
So now we're going to get into the fun part. This is 5 Fire Faves. So this is a rapid fire series to get to know you better. So totally off the cuff. All right, number 1, what's your favorite beauty trend?
So favorite beauty trend, blush. Blush is having a huge moment right now, and I'm just happy that it finally gets the respect that it needs.
Okay. Favorite wellness modality?
Does therapy count?
Okay, yeah,
therapy.
Of course.
Me and my therapist have been rocking hard for like 15 years. So I believe in therapy. I believe that everyone needs that space to be selfish. Mm-hmm. So many interactions, even with your family. Yeah. Someone wants something from you, or you're trying to support someone else. You can't be your true self. I believe that sitting in a therapist's office is the only non-transactional relationship that you have, that you can just say all the things that are on your mind and really get it out and work through it.
Favorite travel destination?
A beach. I need a beach, and I do wear sunscreen. I know tanning is bad. It's so bad. It ruins your DNA. People don't tan, but I'm gonna be out there with UPF clothing and an umbrella. I love the beach. Bermuda is one of my favorite spots to go because it's a quick flight from New York.
So you shared a few of these with us already, but what is your go-to personal finance hack?
Yeah, I would say, avoiding lifestyle creep and paying yourself first. If you never see it in your checking account, then there's an opportunity to spend it. Exactly. So I think making a plan that allows you to have just enough in your checking account and having through direct deposit, your job, put money everywhere else is really a key to staying on top of your personal finance.
For sure. All right, lastly, your best productivity hack.
Oh, I'm a procrastinator by nature, so this one's tough. I love a to-do list. I'm a to-do list fiend. I have to-do lists on top of my to-do lists on top of my to-do lists. Is that effective? I don't really know.
Jessica, I have to tell you, this conversation was so inspiring. I feel like we could keep this going.
Yeah, we definitely could.
Easily, but I know you're busy. You've got a lot going on. So I really, really loved my conversation with Jessica, and I want to share just a few of my key takeaways with you. So during my conversation with Jessica, we talked about imposter syndrome. And it's basically this idea that you're not worthy enough of, deserving that next big thing. And this is something that Jessica had to overcome. And she did that by having her own hype person and just reinforcing that belief in herself. And I totally, totally agree with that. I actually wrote a recent article on nancytwine.com about this subject. But really, to overcome imposter syndrome, you just have to continue to remember that everyone starts somewhere and you are worthy. So just build up that confidence and you can definitely overcome it. So one of the things Jessica and I talked about is delegating. And delegating is not easy because it requires trust and you've got to train someone up to do the things that you need to do. And oftentimes when we think about delegating, we think about doing it in the workplace. But the truth is, there is such a big opportunity for us to delegate within our personal lives. And Jessica does that so well. And it's something that I'm starting to do more of, because time outside of work is so precious, and we want to use that time to recharge, to spend time with friends and family. And sometimes we can only do that if we find someone who can take some of the other things off our plate. So remember, delegation is not just for the workplace, but it's also for your personal life. And for this last point, I absolutely love that Jessica is all about her personal financial health and this concept of pay yourself first, which I think is so important, because as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, it's so easy to get caught up and solely focus on your business's financial health, but you have to do the same thing for your own personal financial health. And so this idea of really having a good understanding of how much you're saving, how much you're spending, and making sure that you are saving more than what's going out the door is so important. So I love that Jessica is really focused on that. So those were just a few of the many key takeaways from my conversation with Jessica. I always love these conversations because I get so much value out of them, and I really hope you did too. If you'd like to keep up with Jessica, you can follow her on Instagram at jcruel and at Allure. And don't forget to subscribe to this series, leave a review, and share this episode with your community. And follow us at Makers Mindset Podcast on Instagram and at The Makers Mindset on TikTok and YouTube. You can also follow me directly at Nancy Twine on Instagram and learn more from me at nancytwine.com. Let me know your thoughts, questions, and ideas for future Makers Mindset episodes. Thanks so much for tuning in to our first episode.